Good afternoon and welcome to my hobby bench one more time for another episode of I've Got Wood. This is part 4 where I'm actually going to put the wing sheeting on the bottom half of this wing. Now in the past 3 videos I've done multiple camera angles and that's worked alright to some degree, and for some things it's a little easier to see what I'm doing there. In this particular video, I'm just going to be zoomed all the way out on my camera. I've got it raised up as high as it can go, and I'm just going to be doing a downward shot because I think that's probably about the best way to get anything out of this. So, without any further ado, let's get on with this. Oh, and by the way, it's snowing outside. In fact, we're having a winter storm right now. So, looking at, they're saying 6 to 8 inches. Couldn't find anything better to do today than work on an airplane. Okay, here we are. So got the wing upside down. I don't have the towel under here, but I've got a bean bag under one side, and I don't plan on moving or touching this much at all here. And I've got my sheeting materials here. I've got a small steel rule, and I went to Hobby Lobby and bought a new X-Acto knife set. I've got my razor saw, and for these thin pieces I'm gonna actually use my miter saw because it actually fits in there and I can make the cuts with that. So the other thing I've got here is a Sharpie, fine point Sharpie to make measurements. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, this piece of the sheeting is stock, it's original, it's square. This side here is not. I was wondering, I'm going to have a little bit of this left over anyway, so instead I thought I was going to just go ahead and true that up and demonstrate how I would do that. But I think I'm just going to start with this side here. And knowing that I'm going to have to cut a little notch in this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this sheet to do both this here, because that'll be a lot easier to cut that little notch, I think. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to line up, take this, I'm going to line up this here, and I can get it lined up here where it needs to be. I'm just going to put a mark on this side, right at the center joint, between those two ribs, and then I see where the center joint is here. I'm going to put a mark there, and this Sharpie is bleeding, that's why I'm using a fine point, but it's bleeding quickly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make a quick line. And then I think for this cut, brand new blade, never been used. This steel rule's a little bent. I'm just going to, now when you're making a cut across the grain with balsa, it's obviously it's best if it's grade A balsa or B, the thinner, the lower density ones. You wouldn't want to do this with C at all. C, you're going to have to do a razor saw. I'm going to attempt this here, but the thing that's critical here is you really have to hold a lot of pressure down on your steel rule, your straight edge, but don't try to make the cut all at one time either. Don't try to cut all the way through the material the first time. So you just make several passes, and see, it moved a little on me. I didn't want that to happen. So you make several passes, and hopefully by like the 4th pass, it's done. So that's that one. Now what I've got to do is, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say this is where it needs to be. I'm going to make a little mark here and say that's where my cutout needs to be. And then I'm going to use this other edge of this 3/32 inch sheeting, try and line it up the best I can here, and use that as my guide for that little notch. So I've just marked where that notch is going to be for that joiner, a dihedral brace. So now This is just going to be a matter of cutting this. Now I'm going with the grain this time, so this is going to be, this will cut one time. Thing is, I just want to make sure that I stop at the right spot. I don't want to keep going and split the wood. Yeah, so going with the grain, one cut, one slice will work. Against a cross grain, no. So here's another little cross grain cut, and this is just so minute. So that should just pop right out of there. This piece should just fit in there perfectly like that. So we got that one's done. And now I can use this little toothpick thing, the thickness of that, to make my next measurement. So what I'm going to do is, before I glue that in place, I'm going to just hold it in place and mark my next piece here. Looks like this could come over a little bit more. So here I'm marking at the outer edge of this outer rib, and just kind of have to eyeball that one, and make our cutting line. Holding real hard pressure here. And I'm not pushing real hard as I make this cut. I'm just kind of letting the blade do the cutting. I mean, obviously I'm putting a little bit of pressure on there. And you'll feel if you get to areas that are a little bit more dense. Okay. And I'll do the same thing here. Let me do this. This will help me out. Just put a mark here on the wing where that needs to be relieved. Just transfer that mark there. This might not be as easy to use as a little piece. Probably not going to be quite as easy to use. So it's right here. It's my outer edge. And my light this thing up here as best I can. Okay. I hope you're able to see all of this. I may have to alter the zoom factor when I'm doing certain areas, certain things of this, so you can see. In theory, that should be very nice there. So now let's hope my CA glue stayed. Now, so what I normally do is I normally put the glue on the ribs. So what I'll do here now is I'll just put a little mark at the end of these ribs, so I know how far down to run my bead. So I'm going to run a bead here, this rib, here, here, And then here, the face of this. And put that in place and hold it for a few seconds. With my other hand, wipe my glue tip. Always keep your hands busy doing something. I could also run. Ooh. How did that happen? Managed to glue my knuckle together. Run a little bit of a bead here. So that should be in place. Let's do the same thing here. Marks. Now see, this one I can do a little bit thicker bead, or just wait until the end and put another little bit on there for the center drawing, but I don't even really need to do that because the center of this is going to be covered with, the very center section joint is going to be covered with fiberglass. So it's really not as necessary. There we go. There we go. So there's that. So this sheeting, obviously, this is the last piece that's left over. It isn't really good for anything except a spare for something else. And now see, there is something I could do here. I could make this go a lot faster because this is only 3/30 seconds. Now that's marginal for a bend like this. But what I could do is just make this one piece instead of doing two pieces. And just make it one piece. And then what I would do here is I think I'm going to demonstrate that for you anyway. So let's do that. Let's say this piece is going to go here, just like that. So let's make some marks. Where I'm going to cut that. Now I'm also going to make marks here on either side of where this rib is, or maybe the center. And I'll explain why I'm doing that here in a second. So instead of cutting two different pieces and doing it twice, I'm going to do this at one time. Now I'm going to use my, put this lid on here real quick. I'm going to use my razor saw to make this cut. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. Maybe I can do it on this. This miter box has a lip on it, so it really wants to be on the edge of a table. And if I put it on the edge of this table, then it's not gonna be in frame. So I'm just gonna do this. Line this thing up here. Doesn't look like I really got a perfect alignment there. Now I'm just gonna put this in here just very slowly. Make my cut like that. So now you may be saying, well, why did you make these marks here? Well, what I'm going to do here to facilitate this bending is I'm going to kind of cut through. Transfer those marks to the other side here since I'm going to be making the cuts on the other side. Now I could possibly get away with just one cut here in the middle, and we'll see. And I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm just maybe going halfway through, just enough to make that want to bend. I'm going to go over to this other side here. Do the same thing. I'm making 3 little cuts. Not going all the way through. And in theory, that should facilitate me bending this. Works a little bit better with thicker material. It doesn't look like it's going to be too bad here. So it should bend up pretty well there. And I'll just hold it. So now what I get to do is I get to make a whole bunch of glue beads here. And I'm making this a pretty good bead here, especially here in the middle. Pretty good beads to make sure I get plenty of glue there. I'm just going to hold it here. And once it's adhered to these, that was my pinky. Once it's adhered here, then I'll go and put a little bead here in these joints and smooth it out. And I can see, maybe I can zoom in on that. I can see how it kind of, you can see the fold in the wood there. Really need something to kind of smooth that out. I can just quickly use the stick to smooth that seam out. Now make sure I put that stick where it's not going to just stick to something else. So now what I've done is I've created it so that I can do this again, but now I'm going to have to make another cut because this is too wide. And I really kind of want to make sure that glue isn't seeping down there while I'm trying to make this measurement. I don't want that. I want my... So now I'm going to be making a mark here. Making a mark here. And then making a cut. So I'm not gonna just trust this the whole span. What I'm gonna do is make these 2 cuts first, or make this 1 cut here. That there. Transfer it here. This isn't going to be exactly perfect, but that's fine because there's going to be a little bit of a bend here. Oh, you know what? I think for this one, I think I'm just going to have to make. I'm going to have to make this 2 different pieces. I think that's going to be the cleanest way for this because it's not lining up like I was hoping it would. So I'm going to put a mark here, mark there. We'll just make this piece that side. Now if I do this again here, now I can put a mark there. Now this will be a with the grain cut. So this should be nice and easy. The only thing is it's not exactly straight, so I'm going to be cutting across the grain a little bit, so I'm going to have to be very, very cognizant of keeping the blade in the tool. Cognizant of when I cross grain a little bit here that I stay in line. How did I make that? That was like this. So okay, just gotta make sure I turn that around when I put it on there. Holding, moving. Okay, so hopefully that should just fit very nicely in there. It's not fitting as nicely as I hoped it would. I got a gap. Got a gap here, but you know what? That's what these little toothpick things are for. I can use that. Or I can just not worry about it. How did I manage to make that off so much? Was it supposed to go like this? No, I still have a gap there. Somehow I managed to miscalculate or screw that up, but that's okay. We can fix that. Not a problem. And I can show you how to do that too. Yeah, there's a nice gap there. How did I manage to hose that up so bad? So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm just going to kind of estimate and cut a sliver off of this thing and just kind of slide it in there. Looks like it tapers. It's a little bit closer here than it is up there, so we're just going to kind of give it a little bit of a slide that in there just like that. Look at that. I just filled that gap. I'll try and pop that thing out. And put it in my mouth and hold it so I know which way it went. There you go. So hopefully it'll work out all right. This piece here. See, this trailing edge piece here is a little bit further up than this one was. So it's actually right there. Like right here, and then here. Look at that. Woohoo, baby, look at that fit. That's some good fitment there. Very nice. That's nice work, David. It's like you haven't. Well, that really sucks. You just missed. You didn't miss. I made you miss it because I didn't check my battery before I started this video. But you missed. I just went to review to see what I missed, or what you missed, and it looked like the battery crapped out before I got these two pieces in. So it's unfortunate because you just missed some really master craftsman work, in my opinion. So what I did was I had cut these pieces. I was going to make them two different pieces this time. And when I cut this one here, I had a gap here. And so what I ended up doing was I just eyeballed cutting a wedge, and I put that in there. So I filled that with a little wedge piece. Now for this piece, these two trailing edge sheets were not the same width. I mean, ideally they were the same width, but on the assembled wing they weren't. So what I did was I just had to cut one last piece here, and I just kind of eyeballed it and fit that thing in there perfectly. So I mean, this is really a nice sheeting job here. I kind of wish I had done this bend thing here, but I can shave up. I can make balsa dust if I really desire with one of these sticks. Just sand it down and fill this gap with balsa dust. But I don't really think I'm going to be too worried about that since the center joint's going to be filled with fiberglass tape anyway. But anyway, so there you go. That is how you sheet the bottom of this wing. Well, that was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed doing that. It's unfortunate because I'm really starting to feel that again about cutting wood and gluing wood and glue on the fingertips, and luckily I haven't caused any bleeding yet. I say yet because it's inevitable if I'm using an X-Acto blade. At some point something's going to happen and there'll be blood. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching that. I hope you learned a little bit, and I really apologize for the end of the video where the camera just shut off and I didn't look up to see when it had shut off. You only missed a little bit, but I think you got the gist of it. But you know, the creme de la creme was really me getting the fitting of those last two pieces, which of course is not on camera. But anyway, it is what it is, but I hope you enjoyed watching. So thank you.